Hello, and welcome to the Empowerography Podcast. This is a platform created for women's voices to be heard and a place to share their stories, journeys, and successes with the world for the purpose of helping other women who might be on similar journeys. We are empowering women one episode at a time. I'm your host, Brad Walsh, so kick back, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the stories. If you're looking for jewelry that makes an impact on your self-care routine and your style, Empowerography would love to offer you a discount code to one of our exclusive partners, Quartz and Canary Jewelry and Wellness Company. Please use code EMPOWER15 to receive 15% off upon checkout at www.quartzandcanary.com. Quartz and Canary is truly the place where spirituality meets style. Hello there, Brad Walsh here, your host of the Empowerography Podcast. Today, my guest is Suzie Durigon. She is a food blogger and cookbook author based in King City. How are you doing today, Suzie?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for taking the time and agreeing to be here on the podcast as a guest and share a bit about your story and what you do and your journey. And you are now officially part of the Empowerography community. So welcome and thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in, Suzie. You are a trained chef, a food blogger, a part-time culinary instructor, a food brand ambassador, a wannabe farmer, a wife, a mom, and a self-proclaimed certified culinarian. That's a mouthful. You certainly are wearing a lot of hats. How in the world do you find the time for all of this?
Oh, you know what? I don't really know. I think sometimes I'm like, it's funny. Somebody once said to me, like, what do you do? And I said, I always say, that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, what's it called? Catch Me If You Can. Yeah. He kind of fakes his way through life. Yeah. I'm like, some days I wake up and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of me. Because I'm like, people say like, do you know how to do this? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I've never really done it.
And you
like,
figure it out.
Yeah. So,
I love it.
So yeah. So,
all right.
All those things in no order, but yeah.
All right. So I have to ask, certified culinarian. I love it. I love that title and the name. How did you come up with it? And that's not a real thing, right? You just created this. You just pulled this out of the air, out of the Suzie air.
Totally pulled it out of my hat. But
I love it.
You know what? I think I remember watching Anthony Bourdain, and he described himself as a food archaeologist. Which, if you think about Anthony Bourdain, it makes perfect sense. And I think because I'm a certified chef in that I went to culinary school and I have my chef's papers. For people that aren't in the food business, if you once you get your chef's papers, then you generally need to get your red seal, which is a thing that happens in anything where you need sort of training. So you get your red seal in food, you get your red seal as a plumber or as an electrician, and it makes sense because it's like, you could go to school to become a plumber, but, unless you have hours on the job working and doing plumbing, you might not be that good. So sort of the same thing in terms of chef school. Like you can learn on paper how to hold a knife, how to do a catering gig, but unless you actually physically do it, then it's really tough. So there's a lot of rules sort of behind getting a red seal. It's kind of like lots of red tape for the red seal. So you have to basically work, I think it's like 6,000 hours underneath an executive chef. So
to get your red seal? To
get your red seal.
Wow.
And the same thing, like to get your red seal as a plumber, you have to work so many hours under a certified plumber.
It's like an apprenticeship.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So because when I went back to school to finish my chef's papers, which I'll tell you about later, I was 50 and I was like, I'm not doing this now. I've been teaching for a long time and I don't think I could go back as a 50-year-old and work in a kitchen for 6,000 hours just so that I can have this piece of paper. So I just never really knew like what people would say, like, what do you want to be called? And I'm like, people call me chef all the time, which is lovely. But if I'm in a room with real chefs who have grinded in a kitchen for hours on end, it's hard for me. So I sort of created that term.
I love that term. I think it's awesome.
There you go.
So how long have you been a trained chef and where did you go to school for your training?
So I actually, it's kind of a long story, which this will be a theme here. So, but I went to, there's a story behind this, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. But when I decided to go to school, back in the day, because I'm old.
Stop. You are not.
I'm old and fabulous. Okay, there. How about that?
How about just fabulous?
There you go. Telling your parents, like back in the 70s or 80s, that you wanted to be a chef was like my kids telling me they want to be a garbage truck driver. Like,
or an artist, or I want to be a painter, exactly. Or a photographer. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you would know, right?
Yeah.
It's like to have people say, like, this is what I want to do. So, and in order to sort of appease my father, instead of going to George Brown, which would have been the place where I would have gotten my chef's papers originally,
mm-hmm.
I ended up going to university, where I took a course that I would have gotten an undergrad, a Bachelor of Arts, and then a culinary certificate.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up with that. And then I did a bunch of stuff over the course of my life. And then when my kids went back to school full time, I started teaching. So I've been teaching probably for about 25 years.
Wow. Suzie, what inspired you to pursue a career as a chef in the first place?
Well, it's funny, because I think originally my plan was I was going to go into medicine, and solely because my sister was doing it. So I was like, oh, maybe I should do that. And having an older sister. So, through high school, I took sciences and maths, and I was good at it. So I applied to U of T, and I was going to get into medicine somehow, some way. And I was volunteering at a hospital, and every Sunday I would go in and basically play with kids, but just so I had something to write on my resume. And so I was, one of those important jobs, but yeah. And there was a little boy that was born with
mm-hmm.
his heart outside of his chest cavity, and he was in this special chair with this sort of cage contraption on his chest that they were basically waiting for him to be old enough to have surgery where they could fix all the things that were broken in him.
Right.
So, and he was so lovely, and he was in this chair that I couldn't take him out of. So every Sunday I'd come, I'd hang my coat up, and I'd pick up the chair, and I'd take him with me where I'd play with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always laughing, and he was maybe a couple months old. And, this went on for a couple of weeks, and then one Sunday I came in to hang up my coat, and the chair wasn't there. So I said, like, is he having a bath, or is something happening? And the nurses sort of looked at me stone-faced, and they were like, he died.
Oh.
And I remember going to my doctor, who was sort of my mentor at the time, because she was a female doctor, and
mm-hmm.
I would talk to her about becoming a doctor. And I said, I don't think I can do this, because like, I didn't know this kid, and I can't eat, I can't sleep. I don't,
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, don't worry, you become hardened to it.
Wow.
And something weird kind of hit me, which I get. I mean, you have to be that way, or else
mm-hmm.
being a doctor would kill you.
Yeah.
But something in me kind of struck a chord, because I thought, like, I know the essence of who I am. And at that moment I realized, I seriously don't think I can do this, because I had visions of what I wanted my life to be. I wanted to be a mother. I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to, and I didn't think at that moment, I knew that I couldn't do those things and be a doctor at the same time, because I don't know how to separate those things. And maybe
mm-hmm.
I would have learned, but at that moment it scared me so much that I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. So,
mm-hmm.
so I kind of backpedaled a little bit. And the only other thing I knew that I liked doing at the time was cooking.
Okay.
And, so that's sort of the path that it went in.
Okay. What excites or lights you up the most about being a chef? What do you enjoy the most about it?
You know what I think it is? I think we live in a world now where there's like this immediacy to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like being a chef is, no matter what, and no matter how you paint it, you start with a few things and you create something completely different out of it. And I guess that's anything artistic, and painting, and anything like sculpting. You take some really random ingredients and you come out with this awesome cake. So it's
mm-hmm.
that creativity part that I think just stokes me most.
Okay. Now, I've noticed everything with you revolves around food, your job, your blog, your farm.
Yes.
Have you always had, I would imagine that this is a struggle for quite a few. Have you always had a good relationship with food, or have you faced personal struggles with it? And if so, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, of course. Yeah, huge struggles.
Sorry to interrupt you. Is that common though?
In my world?
Yeah.
In my food world?
Yes.
Not more common than any other world.
Okay.
Talking to my friends that aren't in my food world and talking to my friends that are,
mm-hmm.
I would say it's not I think some people just get into it because of the love of food. And
right.
a lot of people, I think we live in a world now, thank goodness, that's so different from a woman's perspective than it was when I was growing up, that, that empowerment piece of being the best person you can be, regardless of what your outside body looks like to the world, because growing up when I was little, that wasn't the case. I mean, there was a lot of emphasis put on what you looked like. So
yes.
So I think for me, that was a struggle because I was an excessively chubby child, and it was hard because I lived during a time where it was okay for kids to make fun of you, and it was okay for your parents to say, you can't do that because you're heavy.
Yeah.
And those things kind of mess your head up a little bit. So I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that I did a lot of work over the course of my life to get, and I'm going to say get past it. I'm not sure if you ever get past it, but to kind of learn from it,
Right. Was there a particular breaking point for you, or like a light bulb moment where, with your own personal struggles, where you said to yourself, okay, this has got to stop. I have to do something about this for myself? Well,
I think sort of going through the process of being like heavy as a child and being an Italian little girl and a Canadian who, like, when you put and a Catholic, you put all those things together and you're like, wow, you're just going to have this little girl that does whatever she's told. So I did. And I like every year I'd go have my physical and the doctor would say, like, you're healthy, but you're fat. And it was like a broken piece of me. And so I would leave the doctor's office every year and he would send me home with like diet supplements or appetite suppressants or, and so like I went through a big part of my growing up years with sort of that in the background of me saying, of like people that were in charge of my life or who I thought was in charge of my life telling me, you're not going to be good enough until you reach this, whatever this is. And when I went to high school, I decided, you know what, I'm taking this into my own hands. And I stopped eating. And I literally stopped eating for 2 weeks.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And it was funny because like when people talk about hunger, like the first 2 days of not eating, like I think I drank coffee like through the 2 weeks. And I remember thinking like, you know what, the first 2 days were awful. It was excruciating pain. It felt like somebody was ripping my stomach out. And I remember thinking like, no, I got this. I can do this. Because anybody you talk to about eating disorders or bulimia or any of those things, it's never about the food. It's always about control.
Right.
And so that whole piece about all of a sudden, I'm this young girl who's like, I am so in control of this. I can totally do this. And, I went through periods where now like I was losing weight, like in a 2-week period. And I remember going to the beach with my cousin and I remember I bought a bikini and I'd never in my life worn a bikini. And she looked at me and she said, wow, you're thin. But she said, wow, you're thin. But I heard, wow, you're thin.
Yeah.
I had never heard that before. So it's funny how it skews your perception of what the world thinks of you, like it's like now all of a sudden I believed this was it. This was the magic moment where like my life's going to be perfect because I knew it. I just had to get skinny. And then one morning I got up to go to school and I passed out. And I was like, and I didn't go to the hospital or anything, but I was really weak and I knew I had to start eating.
Yeah.
But I literally gained 7 pounds in 2 days because my body didn't understand what this food was now that I was reintroducing into my body because it was basically in a state of starvation. And so what took me 2 weeks to do took me 2 years to undo, to get my metabolism back in order. So that learning curve of that 2 years was good because I really learned about nutrition and eating and all that kind of stuff.
So how did you finally find that balance and overcome that struggle, that internal struggle you were dealing with all of that then?
I don't think I've ever overcome it, to be completely honest.
Okay.
It's hard. And and especially being in this world of food, it's around me all the time. It's not like when you're an alcoholic and you say, just don't bring alcohol into your house.
Right.
And when you're an emotional eater, it's part of what fuels you, but it's also what helps keep you alive. So it has to be around you. So, I think I've just learned to deal with it and I have good days and I have bad days and it is what it is. So.
Okay. Now you're also a food blogger. Can you tell us a bit about your blog and how long you've been blogging, how it all began?
I think I started in 2013. And it started because blogging was a very new thing. And I was teaching cooking classes at the time. And I thought, you know what, I think I can have an element where if people leave my cooking class, then they have a place to go where they can go and see pictures and like the recipes there in case they forgot to write something down. And I also wanted to have a place where I could document recipes like for my kids because they were becoming young adults at the time.
Right.
And and it just kind of evolved from there. It started like it's sort of been a work in progress all these years because it started off as just food. And then because I live on farmland, I have a garden that feeds, like I probably grow about 60 to 70% of what we eat in the summer.
Wow.
And, so there's like a little tab there that says like what I grow. And so that's like the gardening part of it. And there's also a tab now that I've just put up there that's about my Bake It Forward project.
Okay, awesome. Now, you said you're a culinary instructor. What is your favorite part about being an instructor and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with your students?
You know, I feel like what I always tell people when they come to my classes, you know, the first thing you got to learn before I teach you anything is just eliminate the fear. If you eliminate the fear going into cooking, then you can't help but be good at what you do and be curious. Eliminate the fear and be curious. But I also feel like if I can through teaching get somebody to overcome a misconception of something that they have, then to me that's like the best thing. So like, for example, I taught a series of kids cooking classes to kids and to their mothers. So it was like an 8-week series and they would come and we would do different things. And there was this one little boy that came and he was the cutest little kid. And the mom said to me, he's very polite. He'll do whatever you tell him, but he just won't eat anything. And I said, okay. I said, would you mind if I could just talk to him for a minute? And she goes, yeah, sure. So I knelt down next to him and he was 4.5. And I said, okay, listen, we're going to like have this agreement when you're in this class. I said, you're going to cook everything that I tell you. And he's nodding his head and like smiling. And then I said, but you're not allowed to tell me that you don't like something unless it goes in your mouth. I said, so this is what we're going to do. You're going to put everything that we make, a little piece of it in your mouth. And if you don't like it, then you're going to lean down with your tissue and you're going to put it in the tissue from your mouth and nobody's going to notice. I said, but you got to put it in your mouth. And I said, is that a deal? And so he nods his head. Good. So the first week he kept like, he had these eyes like, oh my God, I'm not going to do this. And I'd look at him and I'd nod my head like, it's okay. You can spit it out. Right. And he would spit everything out, but really nice kid. Anyways, at this point I had given up. I'm like, whatever, he's never going to learn. So we were about 6 weeks into the 8-week program and we were doing something in February about blueberries. And I said, have you guys all had blueberries? And they nodded their head. And I said, have you tasted frozen blueberries? And they looked at me and I said, you guys, frozen blueberries taste like grape popsicles. You've got to try them. So I put them in these little paper cups and I passed them around and I gave him his and I was like, whatever. So I gave it to him and he popped it in his mouth and he grabbed my shirt and he looked at me and said, can I have some more? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did it.
That's awesome.
And so his mom said he wanted to put blueberries in everything that week. And
that's funny.
You know, to just kind of get over that step would be great. That's the learning part.
Is there really that much fear around cooking for people?
Yes.
I had no idea.
And more so now than before, I'd say before the internet. Because like there's this, you know, when back in the day when you could only watch Julia Child and The Galloping Gourmet, your millennials won't know anything like that.
No, they won't.
But you know, like when that was your only way to actually learn about cooking, you didn't have fear because 98% of the population, other than those two people, you know, really everybody was kind of learning as they went, other than like the recipes that they knew that were in their family repertoire.
Yeah.
But now, like you have the ability to be a professional bread baker and a professional pastry maker and a professional pasta maker. And so the fear, I think, comes in that there's this like innate feeling that you need to be good at everything. And like, so, you know, and I even found over the last 5 years teaching that the questions I got at cooking, like when I was teaching a cooking class, were definitely people that would Google things before they came to the class. Oh, well, I heard this, and I heard if you don't do this, and I heard this. And so, which is great because they're being curious about what they're doing. But it does impart a sense of fear because then everybody feels like if I don't do this perfectly, then it's not good enough.
Right. Where do you teach, Suzie?
Everywhere. I teach. I used to teach at the Loblaws cooking schools, but that was one of the things that COVID kind of got rid of. They closed them all down. I taught at Centennial at a college level. I teach corporate classes to companies. So whatever.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're also a food brand ambassador. Can you talk to us a bit about that gig and how you came about landing that gig?
You know what? It did sort of happen organically. I think, like maybe 2 years after I started the blog, a few companies had reached out to me to do, to develop a recipe and then write a blog post about it. So obviously at the beginning, I charged hardly anything. And then over the course of time, my following got bigger, which is really how you gauge your pricing. And my brand ambassadorship became better in that I would, at the beginning I was like, oh, I'll take anything, which is kind of dumb, but, but as you go through it, does this really resonate with my audience? Is this really who I am?
Yeah. You learn what you pick and choose, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm still not 100% sure because I have all these elements in my business. I'm not really 100% sure what percentage of my business I really want that to be. I mean, some people do that and only that and make a lot of money doing it. I'm just not sure it makes me the happiest. So I've never really reached out to a company. The brands ambassadorships that I do have been that they've reached out to me. So I could make it a bigger percentage if I wanted to, but I just haven't done that. So.
Right. Now, you had mentioned previously earlier on in the interview that you started and founded a movement called Bake It Forward. Can you tell us about what that movement's all about and when you started it and why you started it?
Sure. Again, it's a long story. I'll make a really small version of this story, but
no problem.
It actually started, believe it or not, at a Boston Pizza during a hockey tournament.
Oh, okay.
Way back when my kids were playing hockey, I was at having lunch between games, and I remember watching this woman, and she was a waitress, and I was watching her run around, and she had these I just thought, God, her jeans look amazing on her, and I just kept looking at her and thinking, wow. So then I was thinking, how many times do I think good things of people and I don't actually tell them? Like, how sad is that? So I called her over and she was like, oh, sorry, ma'am, I'm not your waitress. And I said, oh, no, I know. I said, I just have to tell you. I said, your jeans look amazing on you. I had to tell you. I said, because they just look so great. And, as a woman, it's a hard thing. I said, yes. And she almost legitimately started to cry. And I'm like, wow. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she's like, no. I'm just having such a shitty day. And she said, and I just needed to hear something nice. And that kind of sort of resonated with me. And I started thinking about the people in my life that I hadn't really told what they meant. And so at that moment, I thought, you know what, how much time would it take for me on the beginning of every month? So the first of every month, I'm going to write a letter to somebody that I know. And so I started doing that. And that happened sort of over the course of a year. So I wrote 12 letters on the first of every month. And then I started thinking, maybe this can be more. Maybe I can integrate the food part of this. So I kind of started at the beginning. It was called Bake It Forward Friday. So every Friday I would think about somebody that either needed something or maybe needed to be uplifted or somebody who had done something fabulous. And I just started posting about it, not for any other reason, because I did get some pushback from it, but not for any other reason except that I desperately wanted there to be a ripple effect from it.
Right.
For people to say oh, wow, it doesn't take that much to make people happy. So, so that's how it started.
That's amazing. I love it. What a beautiful thing. And started from something so small as giving a waitress a compliment. That's amazing. Yeah. I love it. Suzie, to date, what would you say is your biggest high or your greatest win?
I can think of a bunch of things, but I think it's funny. I'm thinking off the top of my head when we're talking about this Bake It Forward initiative that I was doing. I remember I had a meeting downtown and I thought, it was cold and it was November. And I thought I'm going to make a few packages with some homemade muffins and some coconut water because it's an electrolyte and it hydrates people. And I went to the dollar store and I got some gloves and I made 8 or 9 packages. And I thought before I go to my meeting, I'll just walk around the streets and I'll hand them out to some of the people that are homeless.
Wow.
And because I thought, it really doesn't take much. But it's funny because I realized it was a win for me in that I realized, and this is sort of a repeating theme in my life, that everybody has a story, and you know, trying to give food away to people that desperately need it. I realized that, again, kind of like the eating, you know, your eating issues aren't about food, it's about control.
Yeah.
You know, for these people that are living on the streets, it's not necessarily about being fed, it's about people listening. And, you know, like, it's one thing when people drop a loonie in your cup when you walk by, but that person that's on the receiving end, like, how are they feeling? I mean, obviously they need the money to eat, but how are they feeling? So I remember speaking to one woman, and when I gave her the bag, she said to me, I know this is a really awkward question, but are they vegan? And I was taken aback first, because I thought, what? Like, what do you mean, are they vegan? And like, I'm like, are we really, like, are you? And so she looked me right in the eye and she said, I'm new to the streets, and I'm battling now between my ethics and my hunger. Wow. And that was when it really kind of dawned on me, like, the whole, like, the giving part of what I do and the food part of what I do was like, it's such a big picture thing, you know, like, from that perspective, you know, like, just the judging part, like, don't judge, because, like, everybody has a story.
Yeah,
right? I think that was kind of a win, I think.
That's incredible. What a story. That is so incredible.
Yeah.
It is. Don't be so humble. Not a lot of people would do that. So I think that's pretty incredible. What do you think your unique skill set or superpower is that's helped you become successful?
You know, I honestly think it's the ability to be okay to fail. Because I think people would say to me about being successful, and I always say, like, success kind of would freak me out. Like, when I'd say, like, if I do this and then I become this and then this happens and then this happens, and then, like, what if I become, like, really big in this? How is that going to change my life? Will I still be able to be what I want to be to the people that matter to me? Will I have the time to spend with my friends? Like, I mean, and this is all like if, right? But to me, failing is so easy. So that's what I always think. Like, I think, you know, and over the course of the last 10 years, reading, like, all the books that I've read about, you know, self-help and vulnerability, like, I wear vulnerability like nobody's business. Like, I wear it like a heart on my sleeve. And I tell people all the time, because it's like, you know, that's a good superpower to have, because, like, to be able to fail and be okay with it is like, you're just going to get back up and do better, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? That's the key, is getting back up,
right?
One more time than your failures, right? I mean, we all learn from failures. Failures are great because that is exactly how you learn.
Exactly, 100%. And you have to be okay with it, and you have to be okay to say, I'm really sorry that didn't work out. Like, if it's not just your own failure, if it's a failure that affects somebody else, that you have to be okay to say, like, I'm, you know, and 99% of the people in this world are okay with that. You know, I say to people, you know, that I meet, when they say, like, I'm so freaked out, like, I'm so busy. And I always say to them, like, you know what, take a step back and say, if what you're freaked out about doesn't get done today, what's the worst thing that could happen? And like, a lot of times, like, for me, like, if I have a cooking class and there's 40 people there and I have an anxiety attack and I don't show up, what's the worst thing that can happen? You know what? 40 people will be disappointed. I might owe somebody some money. Yeah. I might owe a lot of people apologies. But my decision to not go there isn't going to kill innocent children in the small community. Right? Yeah. So, like, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of makes you kind of pull yourself together and go, it's not so bad.
Yes, exactly. We're making it out to be a lot bigger than it actually is. Yes. In our heads. And we do that a lot, right? It's self-limiting beliefs and all of that other stuff that goes along with that. 100%. So, speaking of success, Suzie, how do you define that word? What does that word mean to you?
Oh, you know, it's funny. I have this conversation with my husband all the time, because he's in a business that has nothing to do with food. And so I was in the hospitality. I used to work at the Four Seasons as a sales manager. So before I started this, I've always been in industries that didn't pay a lot of money. So to me, the success, like, it's a gauge. Money's a weird thing, because it's a yardstick measure for success, right? It's kind of like when people say, don't get on the scale to see if you've lost weight, because you shouldn't do that. And it's like, yeah, but it's a measure. It's a legitimate measure to see how you're doing. But I've never really I mean, I'm not making six figures. I'm not killing it in the money making game yet. So I think like
yet being the operative word.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think success, in my mind equals fulfillment in what you do. And if you're fulfilled in what you do, then I feel like you can't help but work hard in what you do if you love what you do. And then when you work hard at what you do and you love what you do, I think you create this vibe that's kind of like it goes out into the world. And that vibe, people feel that vibe. And then I feel like that's when people feel that vibe and they want to work with you. And then it comes full circle back to making money. So I feel like it's kind of like this circular thing that's kind of always in motion, right?
I love that definition. That's great. What was a turning point in your life and how did that affect you?
You know, I think having all the issues with food and self-esteem and food, I would say to people all the time, like people say like, oh, well, I would love to be so like sure of myself like you. And I'm like me? I'm not sure of myself. Like
you have no idea.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, again, it's that vibe you put out and people are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I honestly don't think like when I do stuff, I look at it and I'm like, meh. and a woman had asked me this after I taught a class and she said, oh my goodness, she goes, the class was amazing. And I'm like, really? And she's like, of course it was great. And I said, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm that good at this. And she's like, you're crazy. She goes, why do you think these people come? And I said, I don't know. I think they're just being nice to me. She's like, you're crazy. So I think that whole part of like self, like, can I do this? Like, am I really good at this?
Self-limiting doubt.
Yeah. The whole self-talk and pushing yourself down again. And it's hard when you're raised with that to kind of get rid of it in your head. But I feel like, I published a book this year.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And it was hard because it's something that I've wanted to do my whole life. And back in the day, unless you were a celebrity or you owned a restaurant, you never wrote a cookbook.
Right.
And in the last 5 years, like cookbooks are just people buy cookbooks like they buy magazines. So I was like, yeah, I can do this. And, so I think writing the cookbook, especially being self-published, and that was the other part of it was because, publishers will want to publish me. And then I was like, oh, no, they don't want to publish me. So then you get like pushed back down and you're like, should I do this? And then I have to do this. And so I think that was a big game changer for me because when I physically had that book in my hand and then I just started getting all these orders and then I got reorders from people that were ordering it saying, oh, I love it. I'm buying it for my friends. And then stores started calling me and saying like, oh, we heard about your book. We want to have it in our store.
Wow.
And so it was a huge hurdle for me because it was other people telling me, well, you're wrong. You're not actually bad at this. So yeah, it was good.
Well, now that you've mentioned it, tell us about the cookbook.
Well, it's called Just Crumbs Baked, and it's all baked goods. It is actually it morphed into what it is now from something completely different. It was supposed to be a book about the Bake It Forward project because I had collected stories, and it was going to be sort of an amalgam of, Ina Gartner meets the Humans of New York. And it was going to be like a coffee table book with stories peppered with recipes. And people would say to me, oh, you're going to write a cookbook. I can't wait. It's going to be so funny. And I'm like, oh, because for your audience, I don't know if anybody follows me on Instagram. I think I'm hilarious. My kids don't think I'm hilarious.
Self-proclaimed comedian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe I should say that instead.
There you go.
Yeah. But, and honestly, like all jokes aside, I've always kind of thrown that humor in there. And during COVID, people have private messaged me and said, like, thank God, like you're bringing a little bit of humor into this because we need all the laughs we can get right now. So that makes me feel good. But going back to the book, I was like, oh no, it's not going to be funny because Bake It Forward's not really funny. And so over the course of having a few conversations with friends and my editor, I realized that when you write a book under sort of an umbrella, which would be Just Crumbs, which is my brand. And then in the book, there is a few pages about Bake It Forward and the project and what it means to me. But the book is basically, it's a book that's all baked goods because it was the recipes that I had used throughout Bake It Forward. But they're really, really easy. I think the front of the book says with a pinch of nostalgia and a bit of humor.
I love it.
pretty much what it is. It's just a book that is really easy. It's got something called crumbles at the bottom of the recipe, which shows you how to, convert that recipe into something completely different, and just really easy, and a lot of stuff from your childhood and stuff.
And where can people get the book?
Right now they can get it on my website, which is justcrumbs.ca. And that is if you want it personalized or you want it as a gift, I can wrap it for you and send it to you. But if you just want the book and you don't care if it's signed, you have Amazon Prime, I'm pretty sure they have free shipping in Canada. And I'm just in the process now of they're already in Florida, but that's going to be my distribution center for the United States. So that's
awesome. Congratulations. That's amazing. Good
Thank
for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What makes you feel inspired or like your best self?
I would have to say, and I wouldn't have said this before I moved here because I live on 35 acres here in King City. And I would say before I moved here, I wouldn't know what the answer to that was, but I would say nature. It's just being around what happens here, like growing my own food. We rescued a dog from the Humane Society a couple of years ago. So I hike 10 kilometers every day with him because I have to, or else he's a crazy wolf dog, and seeing nature, how like the circle of life here is so clear, and why things happen and how things happen and why things die and how things survive. And it's just totally, it brings you back to, it's kind of like my meditation. Because I'm not a good meditator. I'm not a good slower downer person. So.
I love the terms you create. Slower downer person.
Webster would be turning in his grave. I know.
A certified culinarian. I love it. What is one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received?
Probably don't do it for the money, because I think that I in my non-food world and my friends that aren't in my food world, I've met a lot of miserable people that are making a ton of money, but they're miserable people. And, the reality is like what percentage of your day do you spend doing your work? So you better, and it's such a cliche, like do what you love. Like it's a cliche, but it's so true. Like
it is.
You know better than anybody. I heard your story, and it's such a beautiful story.
Thank you.
I think it's wonderful. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can have all the money in the world, but if you hate doing what you do to make that money, what good is that?
Right, exactly.
You're going to be burnt out. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to have no end. Like, what's the point? You're going to be mentally defeated.
100%. And I think as for anybody in your audience who's listening that are parents, that's an even bigger responsibility for you to be able to, show your children like,
yes,
you can do this. But it's almost like, I always liken it to like, the advice I got from my mom when I got married. Like she said to me, just do whatever it takes to make him happy. And I'm like, yeah, that was so not good advice, Mom. Like, no. Especially for me, I'm such a people pleaser that I was like, wait a second, this isn't working for me. Yeah. So I think it's the same thing for your children. Like you have to teach them, like, it's going to be a hard go, but and I have this conversation with my kids who are all like finished university, and I always say like, it's okay to reassess what you do. And if you decide after you've reassessed that you're like, oh crap, I made a mistake, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know what? Go back to the beginning and figure it out. And going back to the beginning might mean that you come back to the same place and say, oh, it wasn't so bad.
That's right.
But, if you do the work, then if you never do the work, then you're never going to know. Right?
That's right. I also think that if you do something you love, if you find your passion and your mission and your purpose in life, the money will come at some point.
100%. Yeah, I agree. It might take a bit longer. But
yes. Yeah, but it will come.
Yeah. And it'll be easier money. Yeah.
Yes. What would you say is one of the most important things you've learned in your life, Suzie? And what was your life like before learning it? And what was your life like after learning it?
I think it's funny because I just said that thing about my mom saying, and I think that's like, I think the biggest thing for me is that I can't be responsible for other people's happiness. And that's a hard thing. And I know you with the empowerment and the woman thing, it's a thing. It's a thing for women to make people happy.
Yes.
And like you can't do that sometimes. Some people choose not to be happy. And before I knew that, I was a frustrated person because I felt like it was like my mission on this planet to make as many people happy as I could make happy. And it just doesn't work that way. And so it was a bit liberating to kind of come to that conclusion and say, you know, like, I'm still trying, but if you choose that that's not what you want in life, then I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're never going to be able to make everyone happy. You can't. Right. It's impossible. You just can't.
Right. Exactly. So,
what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, obviously, you know, make sure you love it, but also like find your purpose in what you're doing. Like if you choose to be a food blogger, then, you know, kind of hone in on what your purpose is and find your niche. And I think the way you do that, and the way I found that I did it for me, was just be real, be a real person. Like, don't, you know, if you're a food blogger and you get a message from a yoga company saying, hey, want to wear our yoga pants? No, but thank you. But no, I'm a food blogger. And this happens all the time in my world. It's like, you know, if you're a lifestyle blogger, of course you can go across that. And sometimes it is about manipulating what you get and trying to find your space. But yeah, like, take the time and don't beat yourself up about not knowing, like, the minute you start your blog to say, oh, this is what I'm doing. Because it might change. It probably will morph into something that you weren't expecting. And ask people that follow you. That's what I always do. Like, I always say, like, what do you want from me? Like, what is there something that I'm not covering that you want to hear from me? What do you want to learn?
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most common reason for people failing or giving up?
You know, it's funny because during COVID, I actually had this conversation with somebody, because I think sometimes, and not always, but sometimes I think it does come down to not wanting it bad enough. And for whatever that looks like, whether it's for monetary reasons or for, like, just self-fulfillment, you know, I see some of these stores that have remained open through all of this, and they have pivoted like nobody's business. Like, they have pivoted and pivoted because they're like, you know what, this is going to work. This is going to work no matter what. And when you think about, you know, somebody like, you know, who, like, Walt Disney, like, hello. He had this crazy vision to create this theme park. And I'm sure when he had the vision at the beginning, telling people, they were probably like, are you crazy? But, you know, like, look at what he did. Like, and so I think it's like, when you say, no matter what, I will make this work. And in the end, people that really want it bad enough, what they come out with might not even resemble even anything like what they started off.
Yeah, the original vision. I mean, look at the Wright brothers.
Exactly.
They're
Perfect.
a prime example.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
What does the word empowerment mean to you?
You know, it's funny, when you first contacted me and I saw what your company's called, and when I think of empowerment, if I close my eyes, I think of like a woman or man. I think woman in my case, because I'm a woman, and confident and like sure of herself, and which I think most days I don't feel that. And I think, so am I not empowered? But I'm like, no, I would say I'm very empowered. And I think I'm empowered because I feel like I can do it. Like, if you tell me, can you do this? I'll be like, yeah, for sure I can do that. I might make mistakes, but I can do that. And I think to know that it doesn't have to be perfect is kind of empowering to me. So that to me is like, to get over those hurdles, to get to that place, to say I'm empowered enough to know that what I've created, perfect or not, is good enough.
We're going to jump into a little rapid fire section here. So the next bunch of questions will be, like 1, 2, 3 word answer.
Okay.
Thing, all right?
Okay.
How would you describe yourself in one word?
Ooh, I was going to say nice, because everyone's like, you're so nice. But I would say tenacious.
Okay. If you were writing your autobiography, what would the title be?
How I Googled my way to success.
If you could eat only one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, pizza's my kryptonite. Yeah, pizza.
If you came with a warning label, what would yours say?
Warning, she doesn't come with an off button. My husband's always saying, like, okay, stop talking. And I'm like, okay.
But hold on a second. Just one more thing.
One more thing, yeah.
If you could teach the world one thing, what would it be?
Be kind.
What's one thing you want that cannot buy with money?
Harmony.
If you had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what song would that be?
Oh, I don't know who sings it. What's that song? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I'm not sure who sings that.
It's a girl. I don't know who that is, but
okay. Entrepreneur life is
hard but fulfilling.
My favorite way to unwind is
to cook.
Mom life is
the most rewarding thing on the planet.
The last book or podcast I read or listened to was?
Oh, is it okay that I haven't finished it yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Untamed.
Okay. Mm-hmm. If you could change one thing about the world, what would you change?
I would love for people to slow down enough to, going back to that whole thing, everybody has a story. So just be kind and slow down enough to kind of ask that question when you meet people.
All right. That concludes our rapid fire section.
Okay.
Suzie, if you could sit down and have a 1-hour conversation with anyone in the world, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, I had this conversation a while ago with somebody. I know this sounds very weird, but I would say Jesus, because obviously I'm Catholic, but I think about that as a person and a human that lived. Like, how did he feel? Did you feel alone? Like, did you feel pressure to be this person? I think, lots of questions.
Okay. Who in your life has had the biggest impact on you and why?
I would have to say my children. And I'd have to say my children because, I know this sounds like a really weird thing, and I guess this would be for any mother, but I feel like they're they don't come with a book on how to do this. So I feel like, when you're an adult and you have kids, you're like that they're my responsibility. And I feel like, for that period in time when they're little and they physically need you, you realize like that, your power on this planet to be able to mold other humans. So yeah, I'd have to say my kids.
What is the most recent investment you've made into yourself?
I did which was hard because I was like, should I really do this? But I paid to do a one-on-one coaching session with someone, which I thought I was like, do I need to do that? But it was very good.
Okay.
Very good. Mm-hmm.
If you were guaranteed the correct answer to one question in life, what would it be?
I would have to say, I don't know if this is I don't know if I'm understanding the question right, but I think I would have to say, how long will I live?
Okay. What's your personal, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want it to be a long time. I have a lot to do on this planet.
Yes. There you go. What's your personal motto?
Yeah, I go back to that, everyone has a story, but also, you know what? I always say to people when they ask about success and stuff, I always say my favorite saying is always being, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so to me, it's, you'll get there when you want it bad enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What is one of your biggest failures or life lessons, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, I've had so many, but I would have to say, from a food point of view, my very first cooking class in front of 40 people, I chose to make carrot cake because I had made it for a golf course for a long time, for 4 years. And as I was taking it out of the cake pan, I thought, what if this doesn't work? And as I thought that, the entire thing crumbled. And all 40 people gasped as they looked at me. And I said to them, no, I said, see, this is great that this happened because I'm the professional and you guys are trying to learn from me. So if I make a mistake, you're going to make a mistake too. So guess what? I'm going to teach you that you can make cake pops with this. So we make cake pops. So
that's awesome.
So that was a good lesson. I had to figure out how to think fast on my feet.
That is so awesome. I love that story. That's great. If you could speak one language instantly, which language would it be and why? Oh,
this is so easy. Italian, because I'm Italian and I don't speak Italian. I know. Okay. It's such a romantic language. I know.
Okay. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say that I would like my younger self to know that it is okay to not be okay. Because
Beautiful.
That's true. Yeah.
Simple. Mm-hmm. Lastly, if you were to deliver your last 30-second speech to the world, what would that last 30 seconds sound like?
I would have to say that it would be that you have one life, I think. I don't know, in my belief that we might have another life somewhere, but you got one shot, and if you wake up in the morning and you say, I'm just so bored, I feel like there's so much opportunity to do so much. There's like, you can help people, you can create things, you can change the world in your own little way. And I always think if you're on one edge of a cavern somewhere and you're looking at the other side and you're thinking should I jump? And is today the day that you say like, it's too far? Or is today the day you say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to jump. And like, you're just going to having that fulfillment in your life to carry on and wake up every day knowing I could be a difference to somebody or something, then why not do it?
Awesome. Incredible. Suzie, thank you so much. This conversation has been so incredible. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you. You are a true inspiration with all that you've overcome, all that you've dealt with, and what you're doing in the world. Your attitude and your energy just is so infectious and so beautiful and so amazing.
You are so nice.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and share your story. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you and everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Brad. That's awesome.
It's been my absolute pleasure. Once again, my name is Brad Walsh, host of your Empowerography Podcast. My guest today has been Suzie Durigon. She is a food blogger and cookbook author based in King City. Thanks again so much, Suzie. I hope you have an amazing rest of the day.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. You can find me at visuphoria.ca and follow me on Instagram at Empowerography Podcast and on Facebook at Empowerography. Please join me next time for another inspirational story from yet another amazing woman.